Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us in an introduction to anti-racist parenting. My name is Nekicia Luckett, and I'm with Gisou Ravanbaksh. And we are going to hopefully share with you some information that we have to help us become a better human race. So here's a little bit about who I am. I am a resident of Oregon. I'm from Oregon. I always say I'm a native of Oregon. I'm also a single mother of an adult Black man. And I've been a school teacher for over 20 years. I've worked in the public schools, private schools, international schools, both in the United States on the East and West Coast and also abroad in Asia. And I'm also an education administrator, like a principal, but I'm not right now.
And my name is Gisou Ravanbaksh, and I'm the mother of 4 girls. I teach high school history and psychology. I've spent the past 12 years teaching in international schools in China, but I'm a native of Atlanta, Georgia, taught in the public schools there before moving to China. I'm a teacher trainer, and I've worked on creating professional development courses for teachers that deal with character education for children, as well as cross-cultural understanding. I'm very passionate about of dismantling racism, and really the way that this workshop or the seminar came about was through an old high school friend asking that that we do something to help educate parents. I'm personally learning. I'm not an expert by any means. I'm just learning. I've been reading. I have been trying to take a lot in, and hopefully what you will see today is that we are presenting some of that learning. But I guess take whatever I say with a grain of salt, knowing that I'm in the process of learning as well. And also just a disclaimer that today's workshop is specifically focused on anti-Black racism. If you really want to understand racism, it would take hundreds of hours for us to address it and how it affects, all marginalized people. But for today's seminar, we're focusing on how it affects Black people and white people.
And I also wanted to chime in and piggyback off of that because I am no expert. My expertise is definitely not in race relations. It's not something that I really would like to focus on. It just, for me, comes naturally in life, which is what you see right there. Gisou is my homie, and she's going to explain what this is all about.
Thanks, Nekicia. I think what has helped us work together on this is really 26 years of friendship that we have. We go way back, Nekicia and I, to our teenage years when we both were members of a performing arts group called the Atlanta Baha'i Youth Workshop. And we, as young people, we were very passionate about making the world a better place and addressing serious issues in society, such as racism. And we did that through dance and drama. And we just kept our friendship, even though she moved back to Oregon and I lived in Georgia over the years. We did continue to nurture that friendship. In fact, I am her son's godmother, and my children call her Auntie Nekicia. So, and you will hear us talk about the importance of interracial friendships as a part of life for anyone who does want to do anti-racist work. So as we get started on looking at what anti-racist parenting means, you'll see that the first part of the seminar is really focused on yourself and understanding what it means, what racism is, what anti-racism means, because you can't teach your child that which you don't know. And first, we have to understand what this word means because it's new to a lot of us. I think we are used to hearing the word racist or not racist, but anti-racist may be new to a lot of people. So we're going to hone in first on just some definitions.
So we have this video clip from Dr. Robin J. DeAngelo, and if you might be familiar with her, she's the author of the best-selling or top-selling book called White Fragility. It is widely circulated around the white community because it gives insights about what's going on with white people and how they're interacting with others in the world. And she is here. We just put this clip in here to just shed some light on where people are, and just to be aware as we go through the slides, so that we can really absorb all of the information and be able to be great anti-racist parents.
What's white fragility? That's the title of your book, is White Fragility. And the subtitle is Why It's So Hard for White People to Talk About Racism. Why white fragility, and how do we recognize it?
You know, the fragility part is meant to capture how little it takes to set white people off, to set us off into defensiveness. So for many white people, the mere suggestion that white has meaning will cause us to erupt in defensiveness. For many of your listeners, the fact that I'm generalizing right now about white people will set off the defensiveness. Individualism is a really precious ideology for white people, and we do not like to be generalized about.
So let's back up a second and talk about how you got interested in this work and in this subject. I know that you're an academic. I know that you're a lecturer, and you've done, what would you call it, anti-racist training?
Yes.
Or it used to be called diversity training. Maybe
Yes.
It isn't called that anymore.
I think of myself as somebody who came from practice to theory, rather than a lot of academics who go from theory to practice. So I applied for a job in the early 90s for a diversity trainer. That's what we called it at the time. I thought, of course, I'm qualified to go into the workplace and lead people on discussions of race. I'm a vegetarian. How could I be racist? I had that really classic, liberal, open-minded kind of idea about what it meant to be racist. And I saw myself, of course, as outside of that, and felt qualified. And I got the job. And I was in for the most profound learning of my life. It was a parallel process. So two key pieces were, one, for the first time in my life, I was working side by side with people of color who were challenging the way I saw the world. And part of being white is that I could get that far in life. I was a parent at that point. I was in my 30s, and never had I had my racial worldview challenged, one. Two, definitely not by a significant number of people of color, and not in any kind of sustained way. And it worked like a mirror, right? I was like a fish being taken out of water. I would not have been able to tell you I had a racial worldview, because as a white person, I was raised to see myself as just human. Now, you're a particular kind of human. I'm just human. And if we're going to be talking about race, I expect we're going to be talking about your race, not my race.
You tell some very interesting stories in this book. For example, you talk about leading a seminar where 38 out of the 40 people in the room were white, and then one of the participants literally pounds the table and yelling that, white people can't get a job. And everybody who had a job there was white.
It's a kind of delusion. I think that, some people have said when you're used to 100%, 98 feels oppressive, right? As a white person, I was just raised to expect the world to be mine in absolutely any field. I see myself represented. I see myself represented in all my teachers and my curriculum and my heroes and heroines. And so just even the suggestion that we need to make sure we're being fair and including other people seems to set the white collective off.
Tell me some of the things that you saw in these workshops that led you to this theory.
It's a lot like water dripping on a rock, right? I didn't get it the first, second, third, but it's so consistent and so patterned that it's like a script. And after a while, you can just stand there and say, I can predict what this white person is going to say right now. And sure enough, they say it. So I was taught to treat everyone the same. I have people of color in my family. I was in Teach for America. That I marched in the 60s. I taught in a diverse school. The evidence that white people give for their lack of racism is very revealing to what we think racism is. And everything I do is to try to get us off the surface, which is all this all these narratives, and get under there to the underlying framework. Because despite all those narratives, I was taught to treat everyone the same, I don't see color, our outcomes haven't improved. By virtually every measure, there's racial inequality in this country, and by many measures, it's increasing, not decreasing.
You speak.
Wow, that was a lot. Nekicia, what were some points that resonated with you?
Everything that Dr. D'Angelo said in that clip, I thought was very, very important. What is ringing in my head right now is I have Black people in my family. And all of those other phrases that I would hear white people saying, to what's actually happening is it's closing the conversation by saying that I have some experience with race, therefore you can tell me nothing more. Mm-hmm. So that inherent, sometimes subconscious sense of superiority that I see and get from white people most of the time, that I think she addressed that peripherally. That stood out to me when she said she was like a fish out of water. That's exactly what it is, and it's not a comfortable feeling to be like a fish out of water. But this water is not the type of water that we want to live in. Mm-hmm. So with that in mind, know that some things might feel uncomfortable, and they're uncomfortable for Black people every day. So yeah, it's a challenge, and her worldview was challenged, and white people's worldviews were challenged, and I heard that too. And it's not me and you, or me or you, like that, but it's just a way to awaken. It's an awakening, like that fish out of water. It's like an awakening. And that's what stood out for me.
And during the course of the seminar, what we're really sharing with people are more resources, right? So here's this book, White Fragility. I hope the people who are participating today have their notepads or are taking their screenshots, because we're going to be introducing more than just Dr. D'Angelo's work, but other places that people can start with reading. And this was a clip off of YouTube. So hopefully people we only have an hour today, but hopefully people will follow up with their own education.
So let's try to get on the same page. So we all want to start pretty much on level area, just knowing what racism is. And when we say racism, what is it that we're actually talking about? There are so many different definitions of racism. It could be a system of advantage based on race. It could be one group of people of a race or culture having power over another or oppressing another. But we're going to be using this definition by Dr. Ibram X. Kendi to make as our working definition of racism, because you see we have that racial inequity highlighted there. We're going to be looking at some racial inequities and figuring out how to navigate through and change that to make it more equitable. So his definition is racism as a powerful collection of racist policies that lead to racial inequity and are substantiated by racial ideas.
So we're focusing on those racial inequities in American society, and we're just going to present a couple of them here. But really, in any field, whether it's healthcare or education or policing, the statistics are overwhelming. And so we're just giving you a drop When we look at healthcare in the United States, Black women are 3 times more likely to die of pregnancy-related causes than white women. When we look at racial inequity in education, we see a big difference in the scores that come out every year in the standardized tests. These statistics we're taking from 2018 on the national level. We've got 39% of white 8th graders demonstrating reading proficiency compared to 17% of Black 8th graders.
Although this is a worldwide phenomenon, we're going to look at just America and racial inequity and policing. A Black person in America is roughly 3 times more likely than a white person to be killed by police. Not killed, they're incarcerated usually. So there's racial inequity and incarceration rates. Black men are 5 times more likely than white men to be imprisoned. So that leads us to some key questions that we should ask ourselves. Why do these inequities exist? Is it due to some inherent trait in the races? Like, do we have something inside of us that causes these inequities? Some deficiencies or anything? Or is it due to factors in society allowing this to happen? What do you think, Gisou?
Well, I think that we know without a doubt, based on science, based on psychology, based on biology, that it has nothing to do with inherent traits in races, right? Because to say so would be racist. It would be to say that one race has some sort of inherent superiority or an inherent inferiority. So instead, what we really want to shift our focus to is, what are the factors in society? What are the laws? What are the policies? What are the systems in place that have created and maintained these racial inequities? And so back to this idea that there's 2 ways to view it. You can either view it that the inequities exist, the racial inequities exist because of some inherent superiority in whites or some inherent inferiority in Blacks. And if that's what you claim, then that is a racist idea. And we're looking at some of these definitions through the lens of Dr. Ibram X. Kendi. His book right now is completely sold out on Amazon. You can still get it on Kindle. Again, we're introducing you to some authors and some resources that you can continue using to educate yourself further. So we know that it would be a racist approach to say that these differences exist because of something that's innate. So rather, an anti-racist approach is to argue that it's policies, racist policies, that create the racial inequities.
So Gisou, are you saying that like the racist ideas are like people are racist because it's a people thing, it's because of people, it's what we have in us, people are different, and that's what it is, that's why it is. And the anti-racist is that there are policies and systems set up that kind of perpetuate the racism in our society and those racial inequities?
Yes, absolutely.
So you want to talk about race. You all may have heard that phrase or even saw that title of a book. This is Ijeoma Oluo, and Ijeoma Oluo is the author of this book, So You Want to Talk About Race. When I read this book, I didn't even get to chapter 2, and I just wanted to share it with my whole staff. Just like, hey, I have this book. It's so eye-opening. So she is awesome. She has lots of YouTube videos, and she has lots of information that you can get just on media. So I encourage you to look her up, write her name down, right? So You Want to Talk About Race. And she has said this so eloquently. She says, the beauty of anti-racism is that you don't have to pretend to be free of racism to be an anti-racist. Anti-racism is the commitment to fight racism wherever you find it, including in yourself. And that's the only way forward. And because we know we've been wrapped up in the sea of racism in America, then we understand, we should understand that it's just here and we're in it. I live in Oregon. They say Oregon is the whitest state in the United States. Mind you, I live in a Black neighborhood and all my neighbors are not Black. So that just goes to show. But we love each other anyway. We love each other regardless. But no one's free of it. And being here in Oregon, I have some racist tendencies that a Black person may not have. But just because I'm in the environment, I've taken on those things. So it's okay that that's happened, but we need to just be aware and know how to change it. And that's what she's saying.
Again, we're introducing the viewers to some great authors. Hopefully you're taking screenshots or notes and you'll follow up with your own learning. We will, after we get through with our seminar, we'll have a brief period of time for some questions and answers, but you just need to type your questions into the chat box, which is at the bottom of your screen. There's a chat box. And so if, as we're going through this, a question pops in, just type it into the chat box and we'll be able to address not all of them, but a few of them towards the end. I think we often focus on the impact of racism on Black people, right? And that's what, it's something that is becoming more and more clear to us as a society. But something that I find fascinating is the impact of racism on white people. And if white people understand the impact that racism has on them, they would understand how vital it is to dismantle it in society. This quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. really resonates with me. He says, "Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. This is the interrelated structure of reality." And to me, that's just so profound, that we are that interrelated, that we are that connected, and that I myself individually cannot be the best version of myself until you are the best version of yourself.
That's so true. That's so true. We look at that in so many different arenas, and I'll just touch on being a school teacher. I've been a school teacher for so long that my students allow me to be the best that I can be. They help me to uphold a standard to live by, because I know that everything they see and hear from me is like something printed into their brain, and I have to be the best me that I can be so that they can see that and be the best them that they can be. I also see this like when I'm watching Netflix and I might watch a documentary about an African American and how they came up, and thinking about the opportunities that they had and that they didn't have, and how far they had gone. But had they had the opportunities that were afforded to them, everyone would benefit. Everyone would benefit so much, all of humanity, because these ones that they featured had so much to offer. And when we think about humanity in this way, then we can see each other as part of our own selves. This is Dr. Joy DeGruy. Dr. Joy DeGruy has been doing research for decades on the effects and the trauma of slavery on people in America mainly. And she's looked at the effects of trauma on Black people and also on white people. And she is an amazing speaker. She speaks all over the world. She's trained had done training for the police system here in Oregon, for the United States, for the Federal Bureau of Investigation, for the FBI, and beyond as well. She can still be seen today. She does some Wellness Wednesdays. They're webinars on Facebook, Wellness Wednesdays, and you can find her at Joy DeGruy Publications. She has that professional Facebook page, and that's how you spell her name, and you say it, Joy DeGruy. We just have a clip from Dr. DeGruy because she's explaining the trauma that not Black people experience, but white people experience as a result of this these racist ideas and beliefs and
I think to myself, if I were up here in front of you right now, and this is going to become very important as I move into the other slides. If I stomped a puppy to death out here, up here, just a little puppy, and stomped it right here to death in front of you, most of you would need therapy. And I would be arrested probably faster than killing a Black man for killing a puppy. Now, I want you to look at this photo very closely, and I want you to see who's in it. More important than the man hanging, because you got to understand the lynchings that occurred in America happened after slavery, not during. Thousands of lynchings happened after slavery, because this is a reaction to white fear of what we would do once freed. But we didn't create a vigilante group to take out white people, but they did create a vigilante group to take us out now that we're free. See, that happened after slavery. They were called the what? The Ku Klux Klan. They don't wear hoods anymore, they wear suits. But they're alive and well all over the world, even here. So, look at who's in the picture. I want you to look at this little girl in particular. You can't see her closely, but she's actually grimacing, like smirking. Now, remember, let's go back to the puppy concept here. She would be loathed and torn up probably if this was a puppy, which means he's less than that, because she's not disturbed. This little girl is not disturbed by this, but she should be, shouldn't she? People always ask me, they go, Joy, what was the impact on white people? There it is, right there. Can't feel any empathy for him. None, zero, zip.
That was profound. It ties in what Dr. DeGruy just talked about that that lack of empathy that racism developed in white people. It connects very well with this quote from Lilla Watson, who's an Aboriginal elder and activist. And she says that if you have come to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. And I think that's what's at the heart of anti-racist work, is realizing that when we dismantle the system, when we confront it, and we actually free all of us from the shackles of that system. It's all of our liberation interconnected. And so let's get to work, because there's a lot of work to do. And on that note,
we're going to look at some things that you can address with your children. Some do's and don'ts is the way that we put it. And the first one is addressing diversity. Phrases like, I don't see color, love is blind, are phrases that are old world phrases. They tell us not to recognize what is before our eyes. So, I believe that truthfulness is the foundation of all human virtues. To develop these virtues, we have to be truthful in everything, what we say, what we see, what we feel. And children are so honest, so pure. And when you say that you don't see the color of someone, they can pretend and imagine, but they, like us, also see. So that idea of color blindness is something that needs to change, because love sees all colors. In fact, love sees every part of everyone. And there's always a part of every person that is worthy of love. We are human beings, and we're not perfect, yet we have qualities that radiate out of us and that are attractive and loving. So I have this analogy I like to use, and you can use it with your children too, about diversity and appreciating the differences in each of us, is that the children love dandelions. They love these little yellow flowers that just pop up all over the place. We know how adults feel about them. But then this yellow flower, it transforms, it opens up, it turns to this white ball, and then you can pick it and blow it, and you see all these seeds disperse into the air, and it's such a beautiful thing. That's a dandelion. That's a type of flower. Then there's other types of flowers too, like the rose, which is one that a lot of adults appreciate. The rose, we exchange roses between each other to show how much we love each other. We use roses for many different occasions. And the rose is such a beautiful flower. The colors are beautiful. The petals are soft. They're very fragrant. They do so much for us. And this is such a beautiful flower. And dandelions are too. And then we see that we have people in the world who have these different characteristics, different looks, different qualities, different properties, but we're all human beings. And all of those differences allow us to be the diverse and beautiful group that we are, and allow us to do many different things in the world. If everyone was all the same, then how could we have any progress? So we have this diversity amongst us as human beings that allow us that we should appreciate, that allow us to one, learn from each other, mainly learn from each other, and to be able to advance civilization too. So there's unity. We're all united as a human, as humankind, as human beings, but we should appreciate all the differences that each of us have. Also, being an elementary school teacher for such a long time, I see a lot of children's literature and media, and what I see and what I choose to or not choose to put on my shelves has really been, something that I pay a lot of attention to before the start of the school year, because a lot of the books that I've come across are, little white boys and their dogs, or if they're little black boys, they're poor, they're needy, they have major problems, and they're not looked upon in society as good. Little black girls in children's books are often, understood, and they're in their feelings about that, and we see little white girls as heroes. And what does that look like to a diverse group of children who have this small variety of books to choose from? So just to let you know that there's just a myriad of children's literature that we can pull from to help us share with our children the diversity that we have. So what I was talking about, describing the books of old, they're encased and they have a lot of stereotypes. Moving away from that and actually humanizing the characters in books that are of different races and cultures and backgrounds, and especially the Black people. humanizes us, so that we're seen in a different light. And when your child actually sees Black people in their world, in their real world, then they have a very positive image to relate it to. And this image that we have here called Hair Love is something that you may have seen in social media, like on YouTube, and they're beautiful stories, and they definitely show, from my point of view, a really true Black experience. What do you think about this Hair Love, Gisou?
I watched the short film with my 9-year-old and 8-year-old daughters, and they loved it. It's a book. We haven't found the book. We haven't read the book, but we watched it's a short film, and it was amazing because as little girls, they could completely relate to the little girl here in Hair Love. And they understood that her skin color is different than theirs, that her hair is a different texture than theirs, but it didn't stop them from feeling a human connection, because here was her father trying to fix her hair without much experience. And they've experienced that themselves as little girls, of daddy trying to fix their hair and that sort of thing. So I can see how different that experience is for them versus media that in which the white characters might be three-dimensional, but that the Black characters are just, they're nameless, or they fit a stereotype or something like that. So yeah, there's a wealth of resources, and it just takes some Google searching to find the right books and videos. Here's a topic that, just like white fragility can be very difficult for white people to talk about, because often we experience some degree of guilt when we acknowledge that there is white privilege in our society. And that's not the goal. The goal is not to be paralyzed by guilt or to feel ashamed. The goal is to recognize that it exists, so that while it still does exist in society, we know how to use it. With my 9-year-old and 8-year-old, I've got 2 teenagers as well. We all saw the video of the Central Park incident with Amy Cooper that happened in late May of this year, 2020. And we saw how her white privilege was weaponized. And we watched it together, even with the little ones, the 8 and 9-year-old, and we stopped it, we paused it, we talked about it, we dissected it. And we explicitly told them they are never, ever, ever to use their privilege to do harm like that, to weaponize it. But instead, those who do have white privilege can learn how to use it as a tool to speak up for Black people, to protect Black people. I think one of the most powerful images that I have seen recently is this one out of Louisville, Kentucky. It was a protest calling for justice for Breonna Taylor, and these white women, being very aware of their privilege, formed this wall to protect the Black protesters, which were right behind them, to protect them from the police that were right in front of them. It's a very powerful image.
Yeah, I see young people there. I see young people there too, exercising their white privilege in a positive way as a tool. And I must say, even very young children have an idea of their white privilege. I have one example, and this could also be as an example of cultural appropriation too. There was a Muslim child in the school, and she wore her headdress, and a white classmate of hers was really admiring it, and so she didn't take it from her or anything, but she came to school wearing one because she loved it so much, and she wore it. And that's a very subtle form of white privilege when you see that right there. But I'm just I that's something that just happened like this past school year that resonated with me. But I we also see it other places. But she was so young, and it was like, I can do this if I want to.
Mm.
Not really appreciating or even understanding why it is done, or the culture.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Nekicia, I think a lot of parents are wondering how much of what is going on around us should they be sharing with their children. So what are your thoughts on how much parents should be sharing and how they can talk to their kids about the protests and, you know, the police brutality and all of that?
Okay, I was gonna say first and foremost, but I mean first and foremost two times. So first and foremost, one time, tell the truth. And first and foremost, two times, listen. Because children have a lot on their minds and on their hearts. And they will enlighten you about what's on their minds and in their hearts, so that you'll know which way to go with them. Um, you know, images that might traumatize children, of course, are not appropriate. You don't want your child to be traumatized more than what society is already giving to them, subconsciously. So just allow them to be aware of what's current and what's going on. These are unprecedented times, as we already know, and we don't want children or anyone to go through these times blind. That would be such a disservice, and so sad to say that I lived through this time, but I had no clue what was going on. And I was a young child, and my parents didn't tell me anything. So be truthful about what's happening, but choose words, choose peaceful words. And if the words are not peaceful that you can use, then explain instead of choosing those, you know, some words. But, you know, words like unjust, racism, you know, those, they might sound bad, but just know that if you don't say it, they're going to get it somewhere else. And we've lived overseas, Gisou, and you know, I like to travel too.
Yeah.
Right. I was a young teen, still in high school, as a dancer too, and I was in the dance company when I went to Russia. That was the first place that I ever heard someone call me the N-word. So, you know, if it's not in the United States, it's gonna be somewhere, and it's gonna happen. So let you be the one having the conversation with your child, so that it so that that impact that they might feel can be mitigated, because that's what we want. We don't want the trauma to build. We want the trauma to diminish. So be truthful with them, be careful too, and listen to what they have to say, mind and heart.
And I think a term that keeps coming in my head again and again is keep it age appropriate. Keep it age appropriate, right? So I've got, my oldest is 19. We can have, you know, very deep conversations. She has access to her own resources online. And then my youngest is 8. And so the way that I talk to my 8-year-old is not going to be the same way that I talk to my 19-year-old about what's going on. But we do, so the do not is do not shelter them. The do is do explain it to them in age appropriate language and empower them. Don't just say, this is what's happening in the world, but give them this channel, this sense of self-efficacy that I can do something about it. And the picture that we've shared here is my 9-year-old. We went as a family to a local peaceful protest in our downtown area. And the children, they made their own protest posters. And I let them choose, after having explained to her what had happened to Ahmaud Arbery. She decided that the poster she wanted to make was "We Need Justice." And as she was painting this, she decided that she was going to underline the word need. And she says, "Mommy, you know, some things you want, but some things you need. And I'm going to underline the word need because we need justice. It's not a want. And that really caught my attention at how profound the understanding of this child, this 9-year-old, can be about justice, that it's a basic necessity in society. I want to share another picture of empowerment, just from our own experience. After describing to them a little bit, we didn't show them the video again, but after, this is my 8-year-old, my youngest, describing to the children what had happened to Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia, I wrote a letter to the governor of Georgia, you know, and I was asking for justice, and I made some very clear recommendations. Recently, I've been reflecting on how, you know, when in the consumer world or retail world, I don't get something that I feel is right, I write to them. United Airlines recently canceled a flight that I had, and they didn't give me a refund. And I wrote like 3 letters. I wrote email, I didn't accept they said no refund, you just get a credit. I wrote another one. And that same kind of, no, this is, you know, this is not right, this is not fair. If we can channel that into addressing racial injustice, you know, if governors, if mayors, if police, if they are swamped with letters, that is using our voice, you know, in a way that can have some real change in society. So when the little ones saw me writing my letter, you know, I offered it to them. I said, do you want to write your own letter to Governor Kemp? And they said, yeah. And they had never, ever written a handwritten letter, fold it up, put it in the envelope, put a stamp on it. And here, my little one, my 8-year-old, is just, she's so proud of herself and so full of joy that she got to do something about an injustice.
They're so precious. Okay. Another way that we can address this and be anti-racist parents is to foster friendships. And earlier we talked about knowing oneself and doing for oneself first before we can do for others. You know, when you're on the airplane and there might be something that happens and you need to put an oxygen mask on, you have to put yours on before you can help anyone else, even if the person next to you is a child, right? So this is for safety and security for everyone, and with everything that we do. Have relationships and friendships, your own self, interracial ones and multicultural ones, like true friendships where you're really talking and listening to each other and really being in each other's company. At this time, social distancing, but still being together. It's possible for that to happen in close proximity with social distancing as well. So, you know, establish those friendships. If you have some superficial or surface friendships with Black people, reach out to them and invite them to do, or, you know, just have a good conversation about something positive. But please don't go ask them, how you doing right now? Okay, that's not the question to ask right now. You don't have to get into the situation that's happening right now. What we would, you know, Black people are really a loving culture. We're really peaceful people, and we're very passionate as well. And just, you know, having that empathy and understanding that you will totally understand when you see Black people yelling on the TV, why that is. Mm. Just think about if you were in that space and your family members or your cousins or your neighbors who are also, you know, someone who's close to you, is that's happening to them, how you might feel about that, you know, and how that might react. So in your own circle of friends, let it be multicultural, let them be Black and let them in. And then it can happen for your children. So oftentimes, and I can speak a lot about Oregon, because, you know, we have these separate neighborhoods based on, you know, tax rates and what we can afford and what we cannot. And so there's like a lot of all white neighborhoods. And then those all white neighborhoods, the children go to school with the same people, the same kids that look like them, act similar to them, have the similar socioeconomic status, They do similar extracurricular activities. Their parents hang out at the same places. They are not getting any diversity. They just have mirror images of themselves. And what can they do about it? So parents, you can be intentional about fostering interracial relationships for your children. Put them in spaces, move them into spaces where there might be some Black children that they might be able to meet. I used to do circus. I'm a dancer as well, and I used to do some circus stuff. And in the building, there was an indoor play area, and it was big. I mean, these kids, I would see them. I'd be practicing. These kids were going in there. They were serious about play. Now, you know that kids will miss meals. They will not listen. They will just, like, when it comes to playing, that's number one, tops, and nothing else matters. So when children are playing and there's some other kids playing too, all that matters to them is play. You know, it doesn't matter what you look like, what you sound like. We're playing. Oh, you are my friend. And so there were some children who met other children there, and there's a space, like a little cafe, where the parents sit, and now you can see all the children playing on the equipment. And they brought, the one little kid brought another little kid. I know that they didn't know each other, they had just met, but they were really excited about meeting each other. And so they went to a parent, and I can see them introducing each other. The child of the parent introducing the new friend. And the new friend was a different race. It was a little Black boy. And what could be done, I'm not going to say what actually happened because I didn't pay that much attention to it, but what could have been done was that those parents could have embraced that friendship that little boy or little girl wanted to have with the little Black boy, and actually foster that friendship by, meeting the parents, talking to the parents where they were there, getting their contact numbers, allowing them to meet up again, and maybe in the same space and then eventually in different spaces, invite them to the birthday parties, do those things. Oftentimes, I was the only Black person in a white space. I went to the inner city school. It was the performing arts school, and it was Black, but in my classes, I was the only Black person. So I was really feeling it. So, Black people build up this, we just kind of get desensitized to it because we have to live with it every day, but we still know it. We still recognize it. We still feel it. And just to be, and I felt it, but I was able to get through it because all of my friends, we knew each other. Just like I know Gisou, I've been knowing those friends too since high school, and we're still friends today. Fostering interracial friendships is just fostering friendships. So be intentional about it. I'm really passionate about that one, so I'm just going to stop there, but I can do a whole seminar on it.
Okay, I will go on to this next one. Nekicia, I think you're muted.
Okay, so in the school setting, it says do not make positive assumptions. Well, what we mean by that is do not make assumptions that the school curriculum is going to be what you think it might be. Like, they might be teaching about African American history in a positive way. They might be teaching about the Native Americans who were here and how they live off the land and appreciated the land. Instead, ask questions of the school board or of the administration or of the teacher of what's being taught, what your child is being exposed to in the school. Ask questions about what they have available. And, you can be satisfied with it. And if you're not satisfied with it, say something. Parents always go to the board meetings and have a say about what they want or what they feel or what they don't want to happen or just their children to see. And they are serious change agents because the board and the administration, we look at that and we consult on that, and changes can be made. And right now in the flux where so many changes are being made, we're really excited to make changes. And actually, if you know of programs, bring those programs in. Let us look at them so that they can be initiated. Okay, this is talk the talk and walk the walk. Black people, we know this, that phrase, because we always say, well, if you're gonna talk the talk, you gotta walk the walk. That means don't just be telling stuff and not doing it, because we're not gonna believe you, and we don't want to hear anything you have to say if you're not doing it. Therefore, I'll just go down the list. You just keep educating your own self on this. It's lifelong learning process for everyone, even for myself. Believe Black people's lived experiences, because we usually do tell the truth. Use your voice to speak out against injustice. Your voice is very powerful, and you can make change. You saw what happened with these protests, right? When Black people protest, what do we get? I won't even say it on a webinar, but you know what happens. And it's not the smiling thing, but we can see that change can definitely be made. And in this society, we know who can help make those changes happen. So speak out against injustice, confront racist comments, jokes, microaggressions whenever you witness them. And unfortunately, they happen in the comfort of people's own homes with their own loving loved family members. Sometimes just practice what you might say, or practice how you might respond with a more loving thought. Give them a thought of peace instead of a thought of war. Give them something that is not combative. Give them something that will help them see the beauty and the diversity in all of us that should be appreciated. And also develop your own interracial relationships and friendships.
Thank you, Nekicia.
We're going to end with a beautiful quote from Maria Montessori, because our children are our investment. The child is both a hope and a promise for mankind. There's so much that we can say about that, and I'll just try to keep it brief. I'm just thinking about Whitney Houston's song. I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way, and show them all the beauty that they possess inside. And not only your own children, but how powerful would it be if you communicated and told a Black child how beautiful they were inside and out? You know how that would resonate with them for the rest of their lives, and how they would use that in their life for the good of the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that brings us to a close, and I know there's some questions that have been typed in the chat box. And if you still have some questions that you'd like to add, please feel free to do so right now. There's been some questions about the recording of this, and will it be made available? We will make it available later on YouTube. And I would say that you can look for the link. Whoever invited you to this seminar, maybe check back with them because we're not a whole lot of people. We've got about a little under 30 people on this seminar right now. So if you just ask whoever invited you to it, did they get the link? I'll share the link on my Facebook, and perhaps Nekicia would too. So we will be sharing the recording. If you want to share it with others, you can share that YouTube link. Another question that has come through is about, the question is, we are told that children are not born racist. They are brought up to be racist. However, systemic racists does exist. I think it's a systemic racism does exist. So isn't there the possibility that children could be unaware of being racist just due to the inherent beliefs in the system? There's another part to that question, but maybe we'll address that first. Nekicia, what are your thoughts on this idea that children are not born racist, but they do, it's learned? Where is it learned then? And might there be ways that they are learning it that, that parents are not aware of?
I definitely believe that children are not born racist. That's the truth. And unfortunately, as we live in this world, we're exposed to racist ideals, racist policies all the time. And yes, for a time, a child can be unaware. They can be unaware, but people cannot lie to themselves. Therefore, eventually it becomes very apparent. And I cannot give you examples. I cannot remember being that young right now. But it does happen. And I don't know right now any way to prevent something like that from happening. But what can be done is, instead of thinking about this wall over here that's crumbling down and it might fall and a brick might hit your child or something like that, think about building up building up something, not necessarily a wall, but building up something that is what we want for the child in the world. And when we focus on what we want instead of what is over there that's wrong, then the child would more likely gravitate towards the integration of things rather than the destruction of things. My son, sometimes I wonder if he has any type of prejudice in his body, because I told you he's an adult Black man and he goes around in the society, and I'm afraid when he goes out because he has no fear. He doesn't fear that the police might do something to him. And it's just like, you don't have to be bad. You don't have to be doing something at all. You can just be in your skin and something can happen. And I'm your mom, so I'm worried. But he is so loving towards everyone. You know, we went on pilgrimage in Israel, and he's supposed to be in the shrines praying. That's what we go to pilgrimage for. You know what he was doing? He was taking care of somebody's kids when he was supposed to be in there praying. Now, see, I have feelings about this, but when I really think about it, you know, he is so selfless. And so you can raise children the way that you want them to be, but they will be their own person eventually. We can just guide them and help them along the way.
That's wonderful. Just to add to, we've got one of our participants, Effie, has written a note in the chat for everyone, and I just want to draw our attention to it. And she has written, as an African American, I would advise providing compliments based on virtues, not appearance. For example, hair and skin hue, and trust me, it needs to be said that it's so important that compliments from parents, from educators, for children are based on, especially for Black children who probably don't hear it enough or see it enough in the media, but it'd be based on the virtues that we see in them.
I second that. I definitely second that. I'm the only Black adult in the building where I work with the children. And, you know, it's just not okay to say, oh, your hair is so pretty today, because that can also be taken as, my hair was not pretty yesterday, you know. And children have so many virtues that they're just exuding, that they're so numerous. Just, you can just see a child and see what they're radiating and use that. and with no worry about what the outside appearance is. This beauty is a beauty that is inside, radiating out. You can even, compliment, their writing, their handwriting as well. I have some students who when they get just a little bit of encouragement, I won't give an example, but just a little bit of encouragement goes a long way. It's like, when you give them an inch and they take a mile, that's kind of like a negative thing. But when you do it in a positive way, you can see it, and it's a wonderful thing. You give them an inch, a little bit of encouragement, and it goes such a long way.
Yeah. To finish up the last part of that first question about, children being born not racist, the second part of it is, it says, or they are at least unaware of their privilege, which also leads to unawareness and making minimalizing statements that would be offensive. What are your thoughts on that? So my understanding is the second part of the question is, even if they're not racist, they could be unaware of the privilege. If, so for white or white passing children, they might be unaware of their privilege, even if they're not racist. And how does that contribute to perpetuating the system of racism? Do you have any thoughts on that, Nekicia?
Dr. Robin DiAngelo, White Fragility.
Yeah. Need to read. Everyone needs to read. Okay, the next question says, I have committed myself to adopt a racist person and convert him or her to an anti-racist, as requested by media entrepreneur Fred Walls. I have typically avoided people like that. It scares me because I don't have an image of myself doing this. I don't have a strategy either. I want to do this though. How do I start? What do I say?
This is, of course, if it's difficult for you to just think about, then, the thought of it is difficult to actually do. I'm not going to tell you exactly what to do, but some strategies that we can use is really trying to overcome fear, really trying to overcome the fears that we have, because one reason why there's so much racism rampant in our society is due to fear. White people were afraid that Black people might do something to them for all of the atrocities that were happening to them. The policing system had a fear of Black men in different ways. So dispelling your fears is step one. And also being not afraid to make mistakes. Being not afraid to make mistakes. There's other things as well. It's all from the heart. We may not be able to change minds, but we can change hearts with kind words. A kindly tongue is the lodestone to the hearts of men. And even if you don't think that you are having any effect on a person, just your kind words and your words that embrace all of humanity, and that person hearing them is having an effect on them. And also, I just also want to say, if there's a confrontation about someone who like is totally right about oneness of mankind, and then someone who maybe not, just having that confrontation may seem it takes a lot of energy out, mental energy and emotional energy out of a person. But then we also have to think, when that other person walks away from the situation, that's all that they're going to be thinking about. That's all that they're going to be thinking about for a long time. And you've done your duty. You've planted that seed. You've helped that little plant that they have in their heart grow, of the oneness of humanity, and you've done your part. There's no need to keep pushing things. And especially if you don't feel comfortable doing it, you know, just get out of the comfort zone, do it a little bit, you know, make your little mark, and then keep on pushing. That's what I would suggest, but I'm not an expert either.
I think all of that gives us a lot to think about. And for me personally, I think people watch one, you know, we watch each other's example, right? So if I'm trying to convert, you know, racist friends to be anti-racist, my example and what I am doing and the actions that I'm taking, and me using my voice, all of that is actually going to be very powerful for them. Probably more powerful than even some of the direct conversations that I have with them. And I think that my own personal approach is to go for the low-hanging fruit. And what I mean by that is, you know, a tree has the low-hanging fruit, which are, you know, almost ready for picking, they're almost ripe. And then there's the high-up fruit that's really hard to get. I think that we will find ourselves, white people will find themselves with many white friends that are low-hanging fruit who actually do have a desire to learn, maybe don't understand the problem. We're all trying to understand the problem, but to focus energy on helping people who are actually interested and care and are open to learning, you might find that it's a higher yield investment than going for the high-hanging fruit. We've got another question. What thoughts or ideas do you have to at least get the conversation going with those that are so uncomfortable with even confronting the existence of systemic racism? Also, suggestions for helping my grade school children prepare for these conversations. So that's a two-part question.
Do you want to address that, Gisou? I definitely have something to say about that second part.
Okay, so the first part, thoughts and ideas of how to get the conversation going with those who are so uncomfortable. I think there's so many ways, you know, we're all using social media to get conversations going, right? So one tool has been to post things that might be of educational value and what's interesting to me, our family has created so far 2 episodes of anti-racism 101 for kids videos, and the children do it like a little newscast, and it's on YouTube. And what's been interesting to me is that when I post those on Facebook to share with people, and they're meant as tools for parents to start introducing the conversations with their children, Facebook shows me how many views it has had. But then you also see how many responses it has, right? How many likes it has, or how many shares it has, or how many comments it has. And what's always been interesting to me is it'll show me that maybe in terms of likes or reactions, it might only have 20 or 25, but it actually shows me that it had 300 views. And that's telling to me, because it shows that people have some interest. They are watching, they are reading, but sometimes they aren't sure how to react yet. And I think we just have to keep those conversations going. People are becoming more and more slightly approaching the point where they're learning how to talk about it.
And conversations will be have been very difficult, but there has been this wonderful dynamic that has happened that has swept the world over, making these conversations more easy to bring up, because it's this global thing that's happening in our world. And that seems to be the conversation starter. And when COVID started back in March, we would see signs like, we're in this together. And, they recognize that people overseas or halfway around the world are a part of us, because what's happening to them is going to happen to us. We know we're going to get it, and we're all connected.
Mm-hmm. And
simply speaking on that and just remembering to keep it positive is going to help, because, today the conversations can easily go south. whatever, you know, that quote that say, and just try to keep it positive, really.
Yeah.
Mhm.
One of
And
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to talk about the what they can do in the classroom with the children.
Mm-hmm.
What I just did with my children in the classroom was I had a copy of the Virtues Project by Linda Kevlin Popoff, and every day I would post on the screen the virtue and then the affirmation, and then the students would say the virtue together, we'd say the affirmation together, I'd read part of it, they'd read part of it, and that would take them through the day. And they had some specials. They would leave the classroom and then they would come back. And when they came back, it would be circle time. And I do a little 1 minute meditation to just get them grounded. And then we would go over the virtue. We would talk about what is it? What does it look like? You know, how do we practice it? What are some signs of success? And it got down to, we had a rhythm going. First of all, they were super excited for that part of the day. It was just that 20 minutes a day where they were just like 100% attentive. They loved these virtues. I only had 36 of them at the time. So after I got to number 36, we started over again, and they were more than happy to do more. And I think that's an effective way to bring up issues, because you start from the heart and you start from a good place.
Mm-hmm. I want to share, one of the participants has shared a quote that they want to share in response to that question about adopting a racist, you know, and trying to convert a racist. And it's actually a little excerpt from Dr. Ibram X. Kendi's book, Stamped from the Beginning. Stamped from the Beginning is one of these books that right now Amazon is completely sold out of, along with How to Be an Anti-Racist. It's really encouraging, I feel, when we see that people are responding with, I've got to educate myself. I've got to educate myself. So this is what Dr. Kendi says about trying to convert those high-hanging fruit. He says, but if there is anything I have learned during my research, it's that the principal producers and defenders of racist ideas will not join us. Okay, so these are the producers and the defenders of the racist ideas. He says, and no logic or fact or history book can change them, because logic and facts and scholarship have little to do with why they are expressing racist ideas in the first place. This is part of a bigger concept that he talks about. He talks about racism as having producers and then consumers. And the majority of us in society are the consumers. We're drinking the contaminated water, right? It's not that we're producing it. So I think it depends on your own individual judgment as you look into someone's heart to see, do they have an interest? Is there a genuine, authentic desire to learn? Or are they just trying to play devil's advocate or protect their own, you know, worldview? Nekicia, do you have any more to share on that?
Yes, not everyone's gonna be on the positive side of things.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with Dr. Kendi. Not everyone will, and we have a lot of work to do on ourselves and our families and in our neighborhoods and communities. So,
yes,
yeah, we don't want to kill ourselves because we want to be the change agents. We need all the human resources we can get.
yes, wonderful. Thank you to everyone for their time, and I know this was something that Nekicia and I wanted to share. We know that anyone who showed up today has a genuine interest in doing the work and in learning. And we hope that that we gave you a little bit of a, what do you call, like an appetizer, right? We can't do everything in just one session, but hopefully we gave you a little bit of an appetizer and you'll do more research and learning on your own. Any final thoughts, Nekicia?
I just want to thank everyone for joining in. Thank everyone for tuning in. I like to give shout outs. So Septa and Michael and family, I'm so happy that you have come. And everyone else, thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Gretchen, for initiating this. This is actually not something that I talk about a lot. But it's just something that is in my heart that I know about. I am definitely a Baha'i, and the pivotal point of our faith is unity and the oneness of humankind. And that's what I'm all about. That's what I'm all about. And that's just it. And I'm so happy to see that all of you are about that too. And thank you so much for coming.